All right, guys, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but we have a situation here, and I would say it's a pretty big situation because right now we have two politicians. We have Michelle Wu here in Boston, and we have Zohran Mamdani, who is running for the mayor of New York City. And I hate to say this, I really do, but they are basically running the same exact playbook or the same exact scam, okay? This is like watching somebody copy somebody else's homework, except the homework that they're copying was completely wrong in the first place. And here's what scares me. You know, this video isn't just about Boston or New York. You're going to be able to apply this across many major cities across the country, and we're going to get into that. But this is what I believe will be the major blueprint that Democrats will roll out in every major city in America, or at least try to. And if you don't think this, then you are simply not paying attention and you are getting massively played, okay? You're getting massively played. So let me start by painting a picture for you. Michelle Wu, all right, if somebody's watching that may not be from Massachusetts, you know, she's a Harvard undergrad, you know, Harvard Law, and she was mentored by our very own Elizabeth Warren, which is basically like shadowing or being trained by Darth Vader. Instead of using the Force, though, they're teaching people how to tax people into oblivion while calling it some kind of equity, okay? Then you have Zohran Mamdani, and this guy, okay, at least from what I was reading, he went to a $66,000 a year private school. Now, that's more than some single people make in a year, depending on what part of the country that you live in. And remember, that was not the price to go to college per year. That was private school. I don't know if it was elementary school or middle school or grade school or high school, but that's what it was, okay? $66,000 a year. He ended up going to Bowdoin College, and then he ended up making this like rap music under the name Mr. Cardamom or something like that, which to me, that name is very stupid, okay? It sounds like something you'd find in the spice aisle at Whole Foods or something, or Wegmans, right? And now he's out here talking about fighting gentrification. Let me tell you something, okay? You are gentrification. You are gentrification. You are not fighting the system. You are like the final boss of the system that's wearing a Democratic Socialist of America t-shirt as some kind of disguise, okay? That's what this man is. That's what we are dealing with here. And this is what I want to talk about today and bring in the bigger picture of it all. So buckle up, because I guess I'm going to do my best to try to break down how exactly this con works and why your city, including ours here in Massachusetts, is probably next. So let's start with the promises, okay? Both of these people, both Wu and Mamdani, are absolutely incredible at making promises. They are. You figure free transit, rent control, defund the police, taxpayer-funded grocery stores, you name it, you think it, they are going to tell you that, okay? And to some people, that sounds amazing, and I could understand that, okay? I could understand getting promised free things. But here's an idea I want you to remember. Michelle Wu, when she ran, and she was originally elected, she was running on free public transit across Boston, okay? But you know what we actually got? We got like 3 to 5 bus routes that cost $20 million. And to be fair, okay, I'll be fair here. I know that the rideshare went up by 25 or 30% or something like that. But that was only for specific routes, not citywide. Because what ended up happening, and this is a key detail here, what ended up happening was Massachusetts got in her way. More specifically, the MBTA got in her way. So she was trying to control something that was out of the scope of what she can control as mayor, all right? That was her first major roadblock, okay? That was her first major roadblock. So she effectively made a promise that she literally didn't have the authority to keep, okay? That's what happened. But it didn't stop there, because then she you got to realize, she campaigned on this, and it didn't stop her from collecting votes on a campaign promise that she ended up collecting votes for. Now on to Mamdani, all right? This guy wants to freeze rent, all right, for up to 2 million people. up to 2 million people in New York, not regulate it. He wants to freeze it. He also wants to seize, and that's his words, not mine. He wants to seize underused buildings or underused hotels and turn them into housing, probably affordable housing. Okay, let's call it what it is. He's also pushing a $30 an hour minimum wage by 2030. Let me tell you something. If you're a business owner, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. Do you know what happens when you try to mandate something like that? Every small business in a city, all of them lose. They all lose. And they could potentially close. Your local bodega here can't afford to pay 3 people $30 an hour, plus potentially even getting benefits. Let's be real, okay? They can barely afford to pay 2 people $15 an hour. I mean, it is what it is. So what happens next is these businesses have a higher probability or a higher potential of shutting down because they cannot pay their employees a mandated rate, okay? Now let's talk about the police. You guys know I support the police here. I know there's not all great police, but let's hope to God that most police are okay, all right? And this is where the hypocrisy really starts to shine. So during, again, Wu's campaign, she embraced defunding the police. She promised to reallocate upwards of I think it was $50 million or something from the Boston Police Department's overtime budget to mental health programs. And she vowed to dismantle the gang database, which she called racially biased. I hate saying these things. I really do. It's hard for me to even talk about these things, but here we are. And she ran on this, okay? She got elected on this. But you know what she actually did? She increased the Boston police budget every single year. A lot of people criticized her on this. The BPD budget hit a historic amount of $452 million back in 2025. That's the highest it's ever been. I mean, even the Boston Globe, they wrote articles on this, which is highly surprising to me, with people saying that she's not progressive enough because of the increase in payment for the BPD and not lack thereof, believe it or not, okay? But let me segue for a second here, because this is what really, really bothers me. It's when these protests that we've been having more recently, they turn into riots in Boston. And when cop cars are being torched, officers are getting injured, they're getting broken bones. This is happening. Where was all of the energy for defunding the police then? It absolutely evaporated. Poof, it was gone, okay? Because what happens here is when chaos actually hits your doorstep, suddenly you need those cops you spent years demonizing to protect you. That's what you need. Furthermore, I'm quite sure Michelle has a police detail parked outside of her house constantly, okay? This is, I say, one thing, or people say one thing and they do the exact opposite. That's the type of situation that is. And that's all that it is. Now, when you look at Mamdani, he's basically doing the exact same dance in New York. He's creating the exact same circus. He talks about abolishing police funding and trying to reimagine public safety, okay? All the buzzwords, all right? They use all of the buzzwords, the key triggers. They probably have analytics on this stuff, right? But when crime is spiking in Queens, which I believe is his district, by the way, you think he's directing social workers to handle armed robberies or assault or whatever it may be? No, absolutely not. He's calling the same NYPD he wants to defund. This is the con. Okay? They sell you on compassion. They sell you on a reimagining systems. But when reality smacks them in the face, they revert back to the same structures they claim to oppose. Look at BPD, for example, okay? They're on mandatory overtime and down hundreds of officers. Of course, nobody wants to be an officer when they're getting disenfranchised by every politician under the book, okay? That's the problem. But here's where it gets substantially worse, in my opinion, because Mamdani isn't just some random progressive, okay? He is a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialist Party of America. This is who Mamdani is aligned with. Meanwhile, in Boston, Wu is having she's had a whole bunch of scandals, okay, that nobody wants to talk about. They bring it up one time and then it's absolute history. Nobody does some more investigative journalism here, at least not in the legacy media. Do you remember back in 2023 when, of course, people talk about this all the time in my chats, but when she had the holiday party for electeds of color only, like, this is outrageous. So if you're white, you can't go to a party? You weren't even invited? It's absolutely outrageous. I mean, what else do I need to say other than that? But the fact is that people here, they just don't care. Okay, they don't care. You know, she ended up using campaign funds of over $10,000 to rent a city building for a segregated party. I mean, it's ridiculous. And when people call her out on this, of course, she blames some kind of right-wing outrage. You know, when I first saw this happen, I wasn't filming videos like this, but I just, obviously, you know this, I got to a boiling point, okay? But I'm saying it now. Okay, I'm saying it now. You can't preach equity and inclusion and then literally exclude people based on the color of their skin or their race. That's not equity. That's just regular discrimination. Like, that's what it is. Period. End of story. You could try to do any amount of mental gymnastics to get beyond that, but that's what it is. You know this and I know this both. It's absolutely outrageous. Now, let me talk a little bit here about rent control, because obviously this is something I know quite a bit about because I am in the industry, right? Like, I don't know if these people are just economically illiterate or what it is. Like, I don't understand why they're trying to push this. And if you remember, Wu promised to fight for rent control in Boston, but you know what happened? Absolutely nothing. Nothing happened because rent control is mainly banned here. And it was mainly banned in Cambridge back, I think, in like 1994. SPOA had a lot to do with this. It's illegal, basically. And she knew this going into the campaign, but she still promised it anyway because guess what? It sounds good. It sounds good to some people. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but ever since Mamdani hit the scene, we have more and more and more. Just look it up. There's people all over the place. You could even, I think on the Globe or the Herald, like holding rent control signs. And I told you this was going to happen. Rent control was next. After this, now it's rent control. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And as for Mamdani, he wants to freeze rent. He wants to freeze rent for 2 million New Yorkers, 2 million people. Let me tell you actually what happens when you freeze rent for a second here. The landlords that own these buildings, they stop maintaining their properties. Why would they invest money when they can't increase rent or even collect rent to cover the costs of their overhead? They don't. They just don't. And then what ends up happening is the buildings decay over time. Then the landlords, they end up converting these units into condos and they sell them off because there's no profit incentive anymore. There's absolutely no profit incentive. So the rental supply, that ends up shrinking. And when the supply shrinks and the demand stays the same or increases for that matter, what happens to the prices for the units that aren't rent controlled? Guess what happens? They skyrocket. That's what happens. You end up with this, like a two-tier system. You have people that are locked into rent-controlled apartments who could never leave, basically, okay, or they don't want to leave because they're locked into a rent-control apartment. And you have everybody else. Getting obliterated by market rate rents that are artificially inflated because half of the housing stock is frozen. Do you see what I'm saying here? Rent control doesn't create affordable housing. What it ends up creating, though, is this kind of lottery system where some people win, but most people lose. The people who lose are the young people or anybody that's trying to move into the city for the first time. And here, Wu and Mamdani, they just don't seem to care. And you know what the crazy thing, when you really step back a minute and really think about this, is these people are educated people. I think that they know this, okay? I think that they know this, okay? They know the data on this. They know what happens with rent control. They absolutely know. They have to know. Like, we're not building rocket ships here. We're not flying to outer space. But I also know this, that they know that rent control polls very, very well. I'm sure that every buzzword, every single thing that they're saying, there's probably some kind of crazy analytics that they're using in order to track this, what to say, what not to say. It's absolutely outrageous and it's absolutely unauthentic. That's what I think, okay? I think it's outrageous. It sounds like you're doing something because people will discredit the data that shows that it doesn't work the way that it's intended. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people know this, okay? This is like common knowledge in my opinion. But in progressive politics, sounding like you're doing something is more important than actually solving the problem. Now, here's where we get a little bit more into the future. So, you might know this, you might not. But Wu's administration has been floating the idea of more recently, of course, okay? We have a piggyback going on here, all right? She's floating the idea of city-funded grocery stores. And of course, they're going to be in underserved neighborhoods. Mamdani pushed the exact same concept originally in New York, and I believe, as I said, he did this first. Then, when Wu caught wind of this, all of a sudden, it's on the table for discussion in Boston. And the argument is that big chains won't open stores in certain areas. So what needs to happen is that the government needs to step in and help, okay? We're the government, we're here to help, basically, right? But here's a little secret for you, and I'll say this, I don't know if anybody else will, but do you know why big chains more than likely will not open in underserved neighborhoods, okay? It's because of crime. It's because of crime. They're scared they're going to get robbed. They're scared of shoplifting, okay? And really, shoplifting here has pretty much been decriminalized, right? Like, we'll just call it as it is. Because progressive DAs that we have, they refuse to prosecute theft under like $1,000. So what ends up happening is these stores, they will inevitably close. And then it gives progressives the opportunity to look at these closures and say, capitalism failed again, right? That's all that it is. That's what they do. They create the problem, but then while also creating the problem, they use that problem as an opportunity to push their ideologies. That's what's effectively happening here. But the hard reality is that you created these conditions that made it impossible for private businesses to operate. That's all that it is. That's really all that it is. And furthermore, why do you think that the Small Business Association left Boston? Why do you think they left? And now you want taxpayers to fund grocery stores that'll face the same exact problems, except when they fail, we're all on the hook. It's all us that are on the hook. It's absolutely insane to me. And speaking of the taxpayers being on the hook, both Wu and Mamdani are all in on the sanctuary policies, absolutely, okay? Absolutely. Boston and New York are rolling out the red carpet for these people. Free housing, free healthcare, free legal services, free this, free that, free cards, free car, free cell phone, whatever it is, it's all free, okay? Wu's administration has spent hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars on the shelter system for illegal immigrants, while Boston residents are facing override votes just to keep their own town services funded. How is this happening? I don't want to live in a world where we can't take care of our own. Okay? It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm all for helping people, but you got to take care of the people that got you to where you are today. You see what I'm saying? And in Mamdani's district, in Queens, they have been overwhelmed with arrivals there of illegal immigrants, just like here in Massachusetts. And the same thing, converting hotels into shelters, schools are stretched thin, hospitals are stretched thin, all of the nonsense that comes with this. And when somebody complains, all of a sudden, they get called a racist. That's what happens. Let me be clear about something here. This isn't about compassion. This is about who pays the damn bill, okay? This is about who pays the bill, because Wu and Mamdani aren't housing migrants. Do you think they're in their neighborhoods? Absolutely not. They're not sending them to Brookline or some wealthy neighborhood in New York, okay? They're dumping them in working class communities that are already struggling. And when those communities push back, they get lectured about tolerance. They're labeled as racist, okay? That's what happens. Go look on any community Facebook group. Go ahead and see what's happening there. You'll see what I'm talking about. You know, you really can't have open borders and also have a welfare state. You need to pick one, okay? So if you're watching this, pick one. Because if you try to do both, you bankrupt the system and you screw over the very people you claim to care about and the very same people that elected you in the first place. That's the truth, and somebody has to say it. But here's also what drives me absolutely crazy. They are both products. Both Wu and Mamdani are products of immense privilege. Wu went to Harvard twice. Mamdani goes to the $66,000 a year private school. These aren't people who grew up struggling, okay? These are people who grew up in a top percentage base and decided to cosplay as revolutionaries. That's what's going on here. That is what's really going on here. Wu lives in a $1 million plus house, and Mamdani lives in Astoria, which is, I don't know much about New York, but I was reading it is one of the most gentrified neighborhoods in Queens. You could correct me if I'm wrong on that if you're watching from New York. I don't go to New York that often. I don't like going to Boston anymore, okay? You know, they're not living, the moral of the story here is that they're not living in the neighborhoods their policies destroy because they are insulated. And when rents skyrocket, when things happen, when there's crime, when there's this, they don't care. They don't care. They truly don't care. And when small businesses close, they don't care. When crime spikes, they don't care. And the reason they don't care is because how convenient, they don't live there. Why should they care? Okay. And plus, it provides them an opportunity to get on camera and show their fake empathy and their fake compassion that they created. Okay. That they created. This is the dirty secret of progressive politics. The people pushing these policies never suffer the consequences directly, okay? They clutch their pearls. That's what happens here, okay? It's always somebody else's neighborhood. It's always someone else's job or someone else's safety that they are willing to gamble with. That's the problem that I have with this. And here's why this matters. Here's why what I'm talking about matters. It matters because both Boston and beyond New York, let's say. Let's take it back even further than this. And by the way, if you think what I'm about to say, I'm exaggerating. I'm being completely honest. This is my opinion, but I'm not exaggerating. This is the beginning of a blueprint. It's the beginning of a blueprint, and that should scare you because it scares me. So what I did also was I looked at Google Trends data. If you don't know what that is, you could look it up. And when you look at this, pretty much right after Mamdani's massive rally in Queens with, Bernie Sanders and AOC, the trends are showing that Massachusetts residents, you're able to see search results based on location. And Massachusetts residents were searching for Zohran Mamdani at 46% the volume of New York City. So that ranks, just to put it into perspective, that ranks Boston as the seventh highest metro area in the country that is searching for this guy. So people are looking, basically people from Massachusetts are looking this guy up extensively. The seventh, and I'm sure in no time will be in the top 3. The reason this matters is because for a candidate that's running for mayor of New York, our local search volume here in Massachusetts for this guy keeps increasing, but it gets better or worse, I guess, depending on how you look at it. When you break it down by city, okay? Medford, Massachusetts, basically Greater Boston, ranked 3rd in the entire country for searches, okay? Right behind Yonkers and right behind New York City itself. Remember, this is ahead of San Francisco and this is ahead of Los Angeles, probably because New York is on the East Coast, as are we. Right? That's the only logical reason I could come up with that. And even Cambridge. There was Cambridge, Newton, Brookline, which are all Wu's territory. Like this is like Wu country, right? They're all in the top 20 metros searching for a Mamdani. Why, you might ask? Because I think that the progressives here in Boston are looking up to this guy or they are studying this guy. They're watching the playbook. They are seeing if the Democratic Socialist thing can scale from Boston's, 600, 700,000 people to New York's $8 million or vice versa. You see what I'm saying? Because if Mamdani wins, every progressive mayor in America is going to think, we could do that too. That's what's scary. That is why I am making this video. I see the data trends. I see what is happening on Google Trends. I see what is happening on our local Reddits. I see how many times people are bringing this guy up on Reddit and in local Facebook groups. And it is absolutely astounding. That is what's scary. Furthermore, Massachusetts progressives were Googling this guy more than almost anywhere else in the freaking country. Okay, that should tell you everything that you need to know about where this is headed. And that search volume is only going to go up. I'll almost guarantee you that, because every major Democrat is watching two people, mainly one. They're watching Mamdani, but Wu is right behind there. Okay, especially if these people are ultra progressive. They are studying this playbook and they are seeing what works politically, not what works in reality. Okay, we live in reality here, but what works politically, because that's what's going to win elections. You could even go, as I said, I want you to do yourselves a favor. Go to the Boston subreddit and type in Mamdani. Okay, there's thread upon thread upon thread upon thread, even to the point of bringing up his political progressive talking points, okay? You're going to see a lot of piggybacking on there between Mamdani and Wu and Mamdani. You're going to see that. Okay? Even Wu said that a partnership with him would be thrilling. That's what she said, not me. That's all that you need to know. So, if this does go, if this happens, and just watch New York, okay? Watch New York closely. They will be the future model of Boston, for better or for worse. But here's what I want to close with, okay? I don't know how long this will take for me to get through, and I'm sorry this is long. But this is what I want to talk about, okay? Wu ends up blaming the state legislature when things don't go her way. Mamdani is currently blaming, corporations, capitalism, all this other stuff, okay? But one thing that they could both agree on, and one thing that they do both agree on, is that they blame Republicans, even though Republicans have zero power in their cities. See, what they do is they focus on national attention, what they perceive to be Republicans doing on a national level versus what's happening in their own towns, and they try to correlate the two, okay? But it's their failed policies that's what's happening, okay? It's, how it doesn't matter that housing gets more expensive or crime goes up or it goes down or whatever it is, or businesses close. As long as they could point their finger at a villain, they are safe and they stay insulated. Do you see what I'm saying? Wu and Healy, they never blame anybody within the state. They blame the federal government because they have no other, they're going to be pointing the finger at themselves, right? And that would look really bad. And look, okay, this is also what I want to be fair with this, because Wu and Mamdani, they are selling you what they perceive to be a vision of a better world, or maybe a different world. Free stuff, fairness, justice, all this other stuff. To a lot of people, that sounds great. To a lot of people, that sounds incredible. And I get it, but it's a lie, okay? It is a big, beautiful lie, and it is an expensive lie that leaves you worse off than where you started. So believe me, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but a storm, I promise you, a storm is coming. It's coming. My prediction is this, okay? My prediction is that we are going to start to see this on a national scale. And here's what people, I think I don't think people get this. I think that these original fringe talking points that the Democrats used to use in places like, here in Boston or Portland or Seattle or even New York, right? Those are over, okay? They're long gone, at least in the talking aspect, okay? That's what I like to call like a beta test, right? It's like a beta test. And what you're going to see and what you will be watching, especially when it comes to people like Wu and people like Mamdani, you're going to see the official rollout, all right? It's probably going to start with New York, and then you're going to see even more of it here in Boston. And remember, they're not abandoning those original ideologies I talked about, okay? They're just not going to talk about that anymore. What they're going to do is repackage it. They're going to take the same exact beliefs like open borders, defund the police, government-controlled housing, taxpayer-funded everything. And what they're going to do is they're all going to wrap that up in better marketing. They're going to do that to try to influence. They've already been trying to do this. They want to try to influence younger voters. They want to try to influence younger faces, with like Instagram stories or TikTok, just direct messaging that's simple. It's free stuff and it works for a lot of people. People love free stuff, okay? It's going to be democratic socialism. That's what it's going to be, instead of just socialism. And here's also what I think will happen. When Mamdani wins in November, and I think he's going to win, okay? I really do. When he does win, you're going to see a massive, massive push by legacy media on these exact talking points, the same talking points as I ironed out earlier. Okay, the same ones, massive. They're going to frame it as the future of the Democratic Party. They're going to say he's connecting with younger voters, or he's offering real changes, or he's offering real solutions to problems, more so problems that they created, okay? And the New York Times will be all in on this. They'll write glowing profiles. This guy will be on MSNBC. He'll be on every week. Kimmel will have him on if he still has a show by that time. You name it, okay? And every single progressive in America is going to look at this, and they're going to look at this win and think, we could do that too. We could do that too. And you'll see it happen here. You're going to see it happen here in Massachusetts. Wu is already laying the groundwork, in my opinion. She's already positioning herself for this. And after Mamdani wins, she'll go bigger and she'll be more aggressive. You could tell. She's already getting a little bit more aggressive, but she's not going to be as passive aggressive as she's been. And you probably know what I'm talking about. At least I see it. I'm hoping you see it too. Because what's going to happen is after Mamdani wins, she's going to have a proof of concept that a card-carrying democratic socialist can win the biggest city in America. And that's how the machine works. And that's how the machine will continue to work, because they don't just, the intention here is to not just elect one person. This is not the be all end all to get Mamdani in here. That is definitely not the goal, okay? They want to create a model. They want a model that they could replicate from everywhere, okay? You figure San Francisco, Chicago, Philadelphia, Austin, you name it, basically every major city with a progressive base. That is going to become a testing ground for the next phase of socialism in America. I think they know that they have a very low, this is my opinion, I think that they know that they have a very low chance of winning the next election based on their previous thoughts and based on their previous ideologies. They don't even have somebody that's really a face of the party, okay? So what they're going to do is they're going to slowly infect every major progressive or democratic stronghold city in America first, and then their intention is hoping that it spreads. Honestly, as I sit here, now that I'm thinking even more, maybe what they're trying to do, here's another alternative. Maybe what they're trying to do is plot this out for the very next election cycle. Because the more I think about this, there might be, and again, there might be, this is a might with a big M, there may be a short-term gain with their ideas, okay? There may be a short-term gain. Think about what happened. Here's a really good parallel or example into this. Think of what happened with energy in Massachusetts. Everybody wanted net zero carbon, save the planet, save Massachusetts, save all this. Everybody was on this bandwagon. But you know what happened? When, it's bad when I'm getting calls from Democrats that are even condemning the cost of energy here, because the long-term effects were absolutely astonishing, okay? Short term, they could live with. Long term, not so good. So if they're doing it, I think that the short-term playbook could work. So maybe they will try to run this or try to run a candidate like this. I don't know. I don't know exactly. But what I do know is this, okay? What I do know is this. It all starts with Mamdani winning and Wu taking a look at his playbook and incorporating that into Boston, okay? They're like a for the people They claim to be for the people, when in reality, they're for the system, because that's what socialism is, which is basically just a different version of like where the government controls more and you control less. That's not for the people. That's for the government. And if you don't believe me, here's what I want you to do. Okay, here's a really, I talk to a lot of people about this. Here's what I want you to do. Go out and talk to any legal immigrant from Venezuela, from Cuba, or from the Soviet Union. These people, they could sniff this out like a bloodhound on an airport, okay? Because they lived it. Venezuela had subsidized housing and price-controlled grocery stores, and 20 years later, they had hyperinflation, they had food shortages, and they had 7 million people leave the country. That's what happened. That's what is the result of socialism, okay? Cuba had like these ration cards or something, and they had those since the 1960s, and they still have them today. The Soviet Union, they had these like bread lines before they collapsed, okay? And now these immigrants that came here, this is the moral of the story. The immigrants that came here are watching the same exact policies get repackaged in American branding by people who went to Harvard and by people who went to a $66,000 a year private school. This is a warning, guys, okay? This is your warning. And a lot of people think that this time it'll be different, that there's, nothing like, think about it like this. If you think that this is going to be different, how much of an ego or how much of a narcissist do you have to be to think that this is going to work and not collapse? Okay? Really, it's absolutely outrageous. So, put it this way. When Mondani wins New York and Wu ends up doubling down in Boston, and this spreads to every major city in the country, don't say nobody warned you, because I did. At least I tried to. Okay, I tried to articulate that the best that I could. But that's realistically what I think is going to happen. And the people who live through this, the people that live through socialism, the people that live through some levels of communism, talk to them. Talk to them. Get their opinion on what's going on, because they're going to tell you the same exact thing that I just told you. Because every single person that I talk to that has either had family or partially lived through something like that, they see it happening here. And it's a sad story to tell. Imagine leaving, like getting through that, coming here, and then having to relive the same exact experience and trying to warn people of this, and nobody wants to listen. It's sad, man. It's really sad. We live in it. Honestly, it's a very, very sad time that we're living in. Because I truly and honestly think that if this does spread, we are in major, major trouble, okay? Whether it be this coming, like presidential cycle, the next one that's coming up, or the one in the future, all right? That's the problem that I have. So I'm sorry for the long rant, guys. I really appreciate it if you made it to this part of the video. But that's it. I had a lot to get off my chest here today. So I appreciate you guys if you made it this far. Thanks for watching the video, guys. I really appreciate the most recent subscribers. A lot of people became members to the channel and trying to support me. I would love to do this full time. I really would. Just unfortunately, I can't right now. But who knows? Maybe by this time next year, you never know. Anyway, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.